And thanks for the invite to do this mastermind with you. So my name is Jeff Seeman. I'm the owner of PC Technologies. I've been the founder, the owner of this company for 17 years. We have gone through a couple of different recessions now and a pandemic, and we're still going strong. Things are good for us. And, you know, IT is ever evolving. And so one of the things I really enjoy about what I do is that I get to keep learning and keep, you know, figuring out how to do things better and using new technology. And so that's really what I'm here to share with you guys. So we have a PowerPoint presentation, which I'll, you know, discuss with you guys as we go through it. If there is any questions in the middle of it, feel free to go ahead and drop it into the chat. And James is going to be monitoring chat for me in case I miss it. And we'll try to get to all the questions you have. And then at the end of the presentation, we will definitely open it up for questions. So that'll be perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Get this going here. Go ahead and start here. All right, so today's topic is about cybersecurity. And cybersecurity is a very big umbrella. There's a lot of different interpretations of it. In fact, I went out to several different sources just to see what the definition of cybersecurity is, and it really varies a lot. However, I did finally choose one that I liked, and we'll get to that here in a second. So on the Cisco website, this is their definition. Cybersecurity is a practice of protecting systems, networks, and programs from digital attacks. These cyber attacks are usually aimed at accessing, changing, or destroying sensitive information, extorting money from users, or interrupting normal business processes. And so I don't know who wrote it, but this is what Cisco has on their website. And they're definitely a leader in security when it comes to firewalls and some software solutions that they have. Ultimately, though, cybersecurity basically means anything that can be accessed via digital means or even physical, which we'll talk about a little bit later. It's protecting of that data. And the reason why that matters, and I tell this story because it was a very eye-opening experience for me. When I was working for Microsoft, I worked in one of their data centers, and my job was to ensure backups were taking place. And at the time, they were moving computers, big servers, from one data center to another. And when they moved one, it didn't come back up. And when they called my department and said, hey, we need you to restore the data for this server. And it turns out it had never been backed up in the 8-9 years of existence of the server. You know, some people got fired who were no longer, you know, in the department that set up the server. They've become managers and things like that. And they paid for those mistakes. In total, what they figured out is that the amount of data on a computer, the server was worth $300. You couldn't have eBayed it, or back then it was Craigslist for $300. It contained software they figured was worth about $11 million worth of data. Okay, they spent almost $100,000 to recover it off of the broken hard drives. So just to give you an idea, you know, your laptops were $700, but your QuickBooks data file that's on there that has all of your invoicing on it, how much is that worth? Just think about that, because that's what you are protecting when you're talking about cybersecurity. Computers are replaceable, servers are replaceable, but the data on it is not replaceable. It is human work that put the data there, that manages it, whatever it is. If you lost your QuickBooks or your billing system today, would you know who owes you money? And that ultimately what it comes down to is, like, that is worth far more than the hardware itself. Let's just remember that. Security threats. So what are the different threats out there? Intrusion. Okay, people are trying to gain access to computers. Websites are hacked all the time. If network's mismanaged, you have exposed machines, exposed resources that they will try to brute force with an intrusion into. And which is extremely why it's important to have somebody that understands IT and understands how networks works to protect your network. Ransomware. So this has been in the news a lot lately. People know exactly what ransomware is. And if they don't, essentially what it is doing is it's encrypting your data with a key that only the hacker has, right? And then they're charging you money to get access to that key so you can get your data back. But ultimately trying to destroy your data or make it inaccessible to you. Phishing. This is actually the probably the single most important thing that you'll need to know about and learn about is phishing. And essentially what it is doing is it's using email and other communication resources to try to get people to click on a fake website or well, that's it, a fake website, essentially soliciting your credentials. And we'll talk more about that later as well. Spyware is small little programs that come in through different means, whether it's email, whether it's clicking on a bad link on a website, etc. It installs a software that is hidden, but what it's designed to do is just capture your keystrokes. And so let's say you bank at Bank of America, they get the log and they can see, oh, they logged into bankofamerica.com. Here's their username. Here's their password. Also, here's their, the name of their dog or their kid's birth date or whatever else they use to verify information. And then they utilize that to essentially now fraud the bank and fraud you of your money. So spyware is very serious as well. And then spam, a lot of times people are doing nothing more than installing what they call relay spammers or spam software on your computer to essentially turn your computer, your network, your business network into a spam relay, trying to get more people in the world to fall victim to the various types of attacks. Okay, ransomware, been in the news lately. Counties, cities, large organizations have all been taken down by ransomware. There was several cities in Texas recently. It was a big deal. It was a combined like $11 million worth of ransom paid to get access back to their systems. There was another one recently where the hackers asked for $42 million to get their data back, and I think they were told to beat it, but they're getting more brazen, they're getting more selective. I used to see ransomware show up on people's laptops, people's desktops. Now they are definitely going for bigger fish. So they're trying to infect a laptop that then connects to a larger network, which is part of a larger, corporation or whatever. And then they're utilizing whatever software they've installed, or whatever hacking tools they've installed to infiltrate those larger organizations so that they can get a bigger payday. Hospitals, one of the big ones that happened that was known around the world is the whole UK healthcare system was fell victim to ransomware. They literally lost access to almost all of their systems, and operations and emergency services were severely crippled because of it. Even locally, the Hoquiam Hospital out on the coast fell victim to it, and I think they are still dealing with the aftermath of that, and it's been almost, I think, 8 or 9 months since that took place. So yeah, I kind of told you about this. It's designed to encrypt data with a key only known only to the bad actors, and then request money to regain access to your data. The horrible truths about it, and this is the conversation you don't want to have with your IT person, is there is no way to decrypt your data without the key. There's no special tool. There's no brilliant IT guy that can backwards engineer the key. The key, and just quick lesson, the key essentially is it's like a cipher. It's like a very long cipher of digits and numbers and symbols and whatever, and then all your files get processed through that, and what happens on the other end is the encrypted file. And that key is extremely long. It's not like it's a password. It's a very complex formula, and can they be broken? Sure. A supercomputer in about 100 years can probably crack a key. All right, but you don't have 100 years. None of us do, right? So there is no getting it without the key, period. The hackers do not care if you're a nonprofit, a family business, or a Fortune 100. And I'm telling you this right now. I mean, this is straight from the mouth of one of these people. They tell you, don't email me, with your sob story that you feed the poor, or, you do great works for domestic violence. They don't care. They want money, period. Okay. They don't care. And one of the other things too that we've recently been seeing, well, I haven't seen, but I've been reading up on, Fortunately, my clients have not had these issues, but um, I've definitely read all the case studies. But one of the things that one of my backup companies I was working with recently, they told us about a situation where the hackers actually gained access to the systems. They put all of their encryption software in place on multiple machines, but in addition to that, their company administrator logged into the backup system on one of the compromised computers. And as soon as they did that, the hackers essentially told the backup company to destroy all backups, wipe them, purge them from the system. So all the cloud backups, the local backups were absolutely wiped out and destroyed. And then they initiated the actual attack where they encrypted all their systems. And there was no recovery at that point. I believe they were forced to pay the ransom to get their data back. So that's just things that you have to understand. They're smart, they're vicious, and they are not compassionate based on the type of business you have. They don't care. If you got money or you got insurance, they're going to go after it. Okay, so this is how they're getting in. It is very difficult to go in through the front door, right? It is. It really is. You have a firewall that doesn't have an active exploit, and even if it does, sometimes they still can't get in. But the idea is that knocking on the front door is not how they're going to do it. What they're going to do is they're going to leave a package at the front door, and they're going to wait for one of the employees to pick it up and bring it inside, figuratively. So phishing, whaling, I'll explain what those are. So phishing is essentially, I'm going to send out emails that say things like, hey, you've got a file waiting for you to be downloaded from your OneDrive. Click here to log in. Seems legit. It looks like Microsoft's. It's got the logo. You click on it. This website looks identical to what you've seen before. You type it in. You type in your password, your username and your password. It fails. So, maybe it's the other password. So you type in the other password. Well, that fails too. Well, maybe it's this other password I remember. That fails also. They say on average, people who fall for these kind of tricks give away 7 credentials. 7 sets of credentials. Now, what they do with those credentials is, one, they'll log into your real Microsoft account or your Google account or your Gmail account, and they will get into those systems. In addition to that, they're also going to try to get into Salesforce. They're going to try to get into your CRM software. They're going to try to get into banks. I mean, they're going to basically push those credentials against 100 different popular cloud-based web systems that majority of businesses use in this world, and they are going to gain access, especially if you recycle your passwords. So, as a point of note, don't recycle passwords. Choose new ones. We'll talk a little bit later in the question and answer section about how to devise a good password, something that's strong but yet isn't so ridiculous to remember that you write it down on your forearm every day so you don't forget it. All right, so phishing is designed to get you to click on a lookalike site and then give away your information. Yeah, another one, your Facebook password is about to expire. Click here, right? Whaling is essentially the same thing, but the difference is that you generally have a less automated and a more intelligent person, an actual human, attempting to infiltrate the company. And what they're going to do is they're going to try to get specific username passwords of your C-level people, like whether it's the financial C-level, the CFO, the CEO, the COO. They're going to try to get as high a credential as they can get. And they don't even have to have like full administrator access, but when they start sending emails as them saying, hey, there was a payment missed, you need to send $44,000 to this wire transfer immediately so that our services don't get terminated at the Atlanta office. Right? If you have an Atlanta, if they did a good study, they had the right person, they emailed the right person that can do the wire transfer, they referenced legitimate offices, et cetera, that is how they essentially get people to wire money to a bank account that, the CEO definitely did not ask you to do that, but you thought they did because it was coming from an address that you recognized as somebody in the company that has the authority to make that decision. So that's called whaling, and they call it whaling because bigger payoffs usually, right? Some try to get you to buy $500 in gift cards and then email them the codes. Yeah, that's small time, whaling. Let's get you to transfer, you know, $70,000, $80,000 to an offshore bank account before you realize what you've done. All right. Once the passcodes are given, a spammer uses them to try to access, I said this, 100 different websites. Do not recycle passwords. We'll go into that. All right. Hardware and software solutions, we briefly talked about this. The first line of defense is having a good IT company or an internal IT that makes sure certain things are in place. Firewall. Obviously, a firewall is the device that goes between the public network and the private network of your company, or in some cases, the public network and your house or your home office. Those firewalls exist for a reason. They essentially prevent outside direct access into the internal, but yet still let the internals access the public internet. Most devices out there being sold are a very, you know, whether it's a router, a firewall, a Comcast modem, a lot of them have that functionality built in, and it's a good thing. When you get more complex, for remote access and things like that, you really need to have somebody that knows what they're doing to configure it properly so that only the right people are getting in and the bad ones are staying out. I did mention briefly physical access, and you know, one of the most famous hackers in all of history was Kevin Mitnick, right? You remember that name? Kevin Mitnick was not, you know, we're going to force our way through your firewall. He was very much a physical access guy. He used to dress up as the, you know, back then, I think it was, you know, what was it called? US West. You know, he used to dress up in a US West uniform shirt, walk into a company. I'm here to fix the slow internet. Can you show me to the server room? And they would just let him right in. He'd go in there and he would install software direct that would then give him remote access or install a virus or whatever it was he was trying to accomplish. So physical access is super important. If you are a financial or a healthcare, dental, you name it, you know, you have a responsibility to protect the physical access of terminals, machines, anything that accesses customers or patient data. Physical is absolutely important. There is everything down to just making sure the screens are locked when an employee isn't using them, to making sure that a computer can't just be picked up and ran out the front door with. All right. So physical access is all part of security. And then passwords, strong passwords. So let's talk about that real quick. So one of the things that that's happening is, you know, people have the same passwords they've been using for years, and so they'll keep those same passwords. You know, the email address might change, but the passwords stay the same. Or there's 3 or 4 passwords they recycle all the time. And there is a scary thing called the dark web scan these days. In fact, we do them for our clients, and essentially it goes out onto a searchable dark web that basically says, hey, do you have any information out there for Jeff Seeman? And it returns back saying, hey, here's all the information we have. Here, his address was hacked out of a Bank of America hack that happened several years back. We have a social security number from when the credit company was hacked 3 years ago. We have a password that was phished. You know, Jeff, actually, me, went out and typed in my password somewhere. These things are all collected and they're stored, and digital just never goes away. It doesn't. It doesn't cost people anything to keep a database of your information places. And so if you continue with the same information and you don't make some changes, especially the passwords, you know, there's a lot of damage that can be done even years later after, you know, you got phished, and you could have been in 2017. You have no idea that now in 2020 it's being used. For example, I'm sure most of you guys heard about the massive amount of fraud at employment security, right? The Nigerian scammers have basically signed up for, I don't know how many thousands of accounts, fraudulent accounts were made, but I know of no less than 7 people who've had their information used to create unemployment accounts of money being shipped to Nigeria by our own Washington state government, but the data that they used all was from 2016, and it was data that was stolen from a major company that, you know, people use. I don't know if it was a Dropbox or something like that, where it had information, what state you were from, your home address, and other information that it wanted. And they used that. They used that 4 years later to essentially embezzle whatever the total was. I heard it was over $600 million was taken from the state illegally, and probably not very recoverably. So just understand, passwords are important, because once it's stolen, it's out there and it will stay out there forever. It doesn't cool off after a couple months. So things that I recommended for passwords: use phrases. It is kind of the new, it's like, you know, people have taken a word and then they'll replace the letters with numbers or add a couple of symbols to it. And, you know, but the hackers are smart. They know that they can take the, you know, a word like Broncos and, you know, put in there BR0 and add an exclamation to it and things like that. They're going to guess it eventually. And they've got tools now that can do what's called the rainbow attacks, where they can just basically hammer on it until they get it using a brute force technique. But what they can't do is multi-word passwords, right? Like, you know, I don't have an example off the top of my head, but, you know, you could do, you know, purple happy hippos, right? Something that's usually don't go together, which is good, actually. That's better security, but it's not hard to remember, because you all know how to spell purple, you all know how to spell happy, and you all know how to spell hippos, right? But there's no password database in the world that has purple happy hippos in it. They just don't. Right? They're doing single word, you know, 8 to 10 character infiltrations. They're not looking at these 26 letter password phrases. So if my advice to you is come up with a funny phrase that, you know, words that don't belong to each other but make you laugh, they're going to be great, strong passwords. So that's my advice for that. All right. And then user security. So in addition to an IT guy providing good firewall, good physical, forcing, you know, strong passwords, they're also going to use the endpoint protection, such as antivirus, anti-spyware solutions. Most computers have it. Microsoft does provide a decent enough version built into Windows now that's free, but I still recommend, you know, higher level security if possible. And then they also make additional specialized software tools that look for suspicious computer behavior. Like if a computer that's in a network, a laptop gets plugged in, and then all of a sudden it's trying to access all the computers in your network, you want your software to detect that and say, hey, this computer is acting rogue, and then give you the ability to address it. You see a computer get a piece of software, and maybe it's a brand new virus, and so the antivirus software doesn't see it as a virus yet because it's brand new. But then all of a sudden it sees it pop up on 3 computers in your network within like a, you know, 1 hour period. It will then, you know, the right kind of software will start identifying that and going, wait, this isn't right, and then start investigating that as well. There are services out there. They're called SOCs, security. Security operating centers, right? Security as a service. And they actually have humans that analyze that information once it's raised to a certain level. And so those services are available through an IT professional. And then also time of day, right? I mean, I know some of us work late at home sometimes, but if you are the front desk receptionist and you tend to only be 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, and then all of a sudden 2 a.m. on a Sunday, that there's unexpected behavior, that can be flagged at a minimum. And hopefully if it's legitimately being attacked, then it can be addressed specifically. All right, so this next slide, if I think it's what it is, yeah, don't be insulted by this, right? But you are the biggest security risk to your company. Just, I mean, I want this to be, hopefully you guys are laughing a little bit on this one, because it is absolutely true. It is the absolute truth, but it can be mitigated. But in reality, you know, I can build a Fort Knox, but if one of the employees walks in with COVID-19, well, guess what? So there you go. So end users are the last line of defense. You can look at it that way as well. And as an end user, you can create and maintain passwords and passphrases, right? And you manage your account and passwords. So you secure your computer. And this, again, means physical security as well, right? Protect the data you're handling. You need to be cognizant of the data that you have access to and the data that you store locally on your computer. If your laptop got stolen at the airport, what was on it? Right? I mean, not only is there company data on there, maybe personal data that you don't want out there. There's all kinds of reasons that you need to protect and secure the data that you're on, or on the equipment that you use. One of the other ones that's super important, and as an IT administrator, assessing risky behavior online. I mean, you need to really make sure that your employees or you as an employee are looking at what is what kind of behavior you have online. There's a couple schools of thought. There's people that will be like, well, no, that's my business computer. I'm not gonna, go click on this, funny meme link because it could be a virus. So I'm not going to use my professional computer for that. And then you have other people going, yeah, well, it's not my computer. I don't care what happens to it. And then they click on it because, it's not their personal machine. It's the business machine, and it's the business's problem. Hopefully you're in the first category there, and you understand to protect your business and protect your employer, that you're not going to put the computer in any kind of jeopardy. And so be risky behavior. You just gotta make sure that you aren't clicking through stuff. And unfortunately, it's so difficult today, because if you type in Goggle and Goggle instead of Google, you might go someplace that's going to try to infect your computer, right? Or it's a lookalike site or whatever it is. And so just be very careful. One of the biggest things that we see is there's a link in an email that says, oh, click here to fix your Gmail account. And if you look really closely, or if you put your mouse over it, it'll actually show you the link. If you guys know that, you put your mouse over the link and it will actually show you a bubble pop-up that says, this is where it's actually going to go. And you want to look at the address. And a lot of times it'll be, some foreign country, because of the .com, .tr, .nz. I mean, those are representing different places in the world, different geographically, or some aren't geographic, most of them are. But the point is that if it's not a .com, .net, or .org, then you better be very, very sure that you want to go there. And in addition, that the domain matches what it says you're clicking on. And that's all part of the cyber security awareness training. And so, for example, for my clients, we manage the cybersecurity training for a lot of our company's staff members. Some industries, for example, require at least 1 hour a year of cybersecurity training, and that can come in the form of a video. It could come in the form of like, hey, we sent all of your staff phishing emails, and out of the 50 employees, 19 clicked on the fake email. So they got assigned additional homework that day to watch the videos of how to spot spyware, spot fake emails, phishing emails. But those are all good. And then also to understand and know your corporate policies. And if you're an owner of a company and don't have those policies, you need to have those for a couple of different reasons. One, obviously, your employees need to know what their responsibility is. But on top of that too, cybersecurity insurance is becoming a very big thing for most companies now, especially if you deal with data. And most of them will have a hard time insuring you if you don't have the proper computer use policies, network policies, security policy, etc. And so having someone that can navigate that with you is a good idea. So what we've learned from successful attacks in the IT world, okay, build redundancy and contingency plans for multiple situations. Backups need to be readily available and stored in multiple locations, right? It doesn't help you if you've, made it impossible to get your backup. If it takes you 2 days to have it shipped back to you, that's 2 days you're not doing business. And so it needs to be readily available, but also too, you need to plan for all kinds of scenarios, not just cybersecurity events, but also fire, flood, earthquake, whatever situation's happening, we need to make sure that we've developed a plan that allows you to get back in business, gain access back to your data within a certain time frame. For some industries, it may not matter. For some industries, they're bound by law to make data available within so many hours of an event. So backups are important. Also too, like I mentioned, how that one company actually had all their backups erased by the hacker. There's great policies. Like one of the policies I have with my staff is that when we work on a customer's backup, we do not do it from the server that actually we're backing up, because we don't want to invite prying eyes into the backup system and how to get in and possibly do damage. Just a policy. We've never had a problem with it, but it's a policy I've chosen because of the event that I learned about. Disaster recovery should be tested often, and that doesn't mean you need to turn all your servers off and see if you can recover. What it really means is making sure that your backups are good. And there's a lot of great backup systems out there today that will automatically test to make sure that the backup image is rebuildable, bootable into a VM. It'll take a screenshot of a fully working computer and it will email it to you saying, all is well. Here's your screenshot of your working server in the cloud, or whatever it is. Great tool, makes it easy to verify that your backups are good. Because honestly, I've been called to companies that they said, hey, I don't know who they are, but they just would say like, hey, we just had a disaster. Can you come help? Of course I want to help. We get there and find out that the backup stopped backing up 6 months ago. And so now we got to find an alternative way to try to recover data if possible, or the worst case scenario, we restore 6 months ago and hope they can rebuild from there. But it's very destructive when data's lost. In fact, data loss is the number one problem for most companies staying profitable and in business. I'm not saying it's the only thing, but it's a huge one. There's a statistic I've seen floating around that 65-70% of businesses that have a massive data loss, they are no longer in business within 12 months. And that seems really high to me, but I kind of have to believe it based on how does a company recover, a year's worth of data loss or 6 months worth of data loss? It just seems unfathomable to me. And then other plans as well. What if the office is no longer usable? Plan for this as well. And this actually became very highlighted in I'm sorry, I gotta see. All right. Oh, I just lost it here. All right.
We do have a question, Jeff.
Yeah.
Carl was asking if you could go into more detail regarding a working backup server in the cloud.
Sure. In fact, tell you what, let me finish this up real quick, and then I think we've got one slide to go, and then we'll be right into those questions, and I'd happily answer that, okay? So, great. So planning, and so ensure that your IT provider can service you in an emergency situation. And what I mean by that is that, if your provider is in Seattle and you're here in Lacey or Olympia or Tumwater, and the freeway is destroyed because of an earthquake, can that service provider help you? Maybe, maybe not. If it's a one-person show, I have no problem with that. Those are really good IT guys that run one person. However, which customer is he going to help first, right? Was it you? Was it another customer? How far down the line are you? And then was there a plan? Did your IT provider help you develop a plan that that can be executed, or do you have to just do it on the fly? And then software vendors. One of the biggest things that we ensure when we work with a client is that if they have a line of business software that needs to be supported by us, we absolutely insist that they are supported directly from the vendor as well. Because when we have a question about a software that's not an everyday software, a software specifically for, scheduling lawn maintenance. I mean, it's not something we use every day, right? But their software needs to have support so that we can support the client properly. And so they have to have an active support contract. And why that's important is if there is a failure, a data loss or whatever, and we would go to restore it, we could spend hours probably figuring out, but sometimes it's easier just to go to the source and say, you know, this is what happened, here's what we need, and in 5 minutes they fix the problem. So, all right, so developing plans, you know, these are different scenarios: fire, flood, pandemic, equipment failure, cybersecurity events, hostile employee exit. Very important one. What happens when you have an employee that has to be forced out, right? How do you protect your assets from that? And then accidental deletion, which is probably one of the most common situations that we see. Have a trusted advisor. Don't have to do this on your own, right? Have somebody that has experience. Find a company that can work with you on these things. You have industry requirements that need to be met. You know, it's not just a suggestion. Most of them are compulsion, and it will matter if there is an event and it finds out that you weren't in compliance. It becomes very, very sticky for the business owner. Develop a continuity handbook, actually a physical written books sitting in the server room or someone's office that can be gotten to. And then practice your plan, make sure that you're ready to go. All right, questions and answers. So the question was, what does a backup system look like that's local and cloud-based? All right, so there's several companies out there, and I'm gonna keep this brand agnostic for now. I don't want to necessarily promote any particular brand. If you want to talk to me offline, that'd be fine. But there are companies that do backups that are just offsite. Your server data gets pushed back offsite. It's can be downloaded again if it's needed. And that's a very basic offsite backup. You have a local backup, which could be a local portable drive that's just plugged into your server and data gets backed up to it every night, maybe once or twice a day. And then those systems are okay. The problem with the local backup only is that who's monitoring it? Do we know it actually backed up? Do we know it's recoverable? We really don't. The offsite one, generally in speaking, most of the offsite ones that are offsite only is going to back up your core data. It's not going to back up like a bootable server image that we can get you recovered within a few hours or even a few minutes to get you working again. It's going to be a more lengthy process where we have to rebuild, you know, a new server or whatever, and then download your data locally, and then go through the process of installing all the software that it runs. Then they have image-based backups, and this is what I use for nearly all of my clients. And what it does, it's usually another physical device, like another server. You know, generally not as big as the original server, but it's a smaller server that can do hourly snapshots of the client systems. It stores it locally, and then also offsites the data at the same time. The benefit to those is that when you have a failure, server fails, something happened, power supply broke, whatever, something sudden happens, it becomes unusable. Generally, those backup devices, they're called BDRs, they can actually virtualize your server. So, okay, server A is broken beyond anything. We can't repair it quickly. We have to order parts, whatever it is. We can say, okay, backup device, spool up or bring up a virtualized image or virtualized instance of that server, and within 20-30 minutes it brings it up and it actually is available on the network. And as far as the rest of your computers and users on the network, they'll never know that it's not the original server, right? You're back in operations within 30 minutes, and it can be even far less than that. So that's great, but what happens when you have a more significant outage? Like, let's say, for example, a fire, or someone set off the sprinkler system in your building, destroyed the equipment, but you still need access to that data. A lot of those solutions also will allow you to create a virtual machine in the cloud. Now, that's got some other issues involved with it. Speed's not going to be very great, and some other issues like that, but it does become available in the cloud. And then when the new hardware arrives, the replacement hardware arrives, those images that can be downloaded to the local machine and then brought up there. And so your recovery process will be a little less friendly, but it does get you there. And it keeps your data accessible as quickly as possible. And it does protect you against loss of premise, etc. So yeah, I've got a lot of information about backups because I've been doing it for a long time. Other questions?
Sorry, my mute button wouldn't let me unmute. But
Oh,
I do have a question from John about whether or not you recommend a password manager like LastPass.
sure, absolutely. Password managers are great. They do make it easier to manage a lot of different passwords and to use random passwords for everything. And there's absolutely nothing wrong. And in fact, I highly encourage it. And there's a bunch of different ones out there. LastPass is one that I've used quite a bit. We have a internal one that we use for ourselves, and we also have one that we can actually license to our clients as well.
Just as a follow-up to that, I know you mentioned brand agnostic, but I think a lot of times when people talk about these ancillary services for IT services, I know myself, I'm typically skeptical about a program or a company that I'm not aware of. So do you mind listing just a couple of different ones that people might be able to explore that are legitimate?
Sure, yeah. And in fact, I would love to help them explore it because most of these brands I sell, which is why I didn't want to go into a pitch, on an informational webinar. But there's companies that I've used that are great. One of the biggest ones for BDR out there is Datto, DATTO, and they're a major company and one of the largest backup solutions out there. There is another one, Axient, is another company that we work with a lot on BDR solutions as well. They actually have some different, even though they both sell very similar products, different scenarios lend themselves to be better than others depending on what it is we're trying to do. And so that's why we have a multitude of vendors for that. But that one's called Axient. And so yeah, great programs. And then even if you just want to do an offsite program where it's offsite only, maybe the importance for you is not necessarily getting back up in 2 hours. Maybe it's hey, if I have a 3-day vacation, okay, whatever. There are some online only backups which work really well. I do have a few that I recommend people stay away from. I'll name one of those, which is well, if you use them and like them, great. But I've had horrible experiences with Carbonite. It seems to do the job on the backup, but when we've had a situation where we had to recover, it took days longer than I would have expected to get done. So, it's great, it's cheap, but yeah, it wasn't there for us when we needed to recover quickly.
So I have another question here from Carl. He says, we use 1Password, which has vaults that we can share depending on job function. How secure are the passwords it generates?
The generated passwords, I think, I'm not necessarily familiar with that product. I've heard of it, but I think you can actually go in and actually change how complex those passwords become and how long they are. I think you can choose some of the minimum specifications for it. Typically, I think you see the password when it's generating it for you, and if it's gibberish, it's probably a good password, and it's longer than 10 characters. It's going to be pretty good for you. The biggest thing is when you do share password vaults like that, it is important that each user has their own username and password to the vaults themselves. If you're sharing a username and password, one of two horrible things will happen. One, somebody that's unaccountable will get access to it and basically grab a hold of all that stuff and abuse it. Or two, somebody will change it and not tell everybody else what it is. And that's probably the biggest risk. And then all of a sudden you're locked out of all of your passwords. It is important that if you have a password manager that it's specific per user. You can share them all day long, that's no problem, but don't use a common username password for your password database. At that point, you've kind of defeated the point.
He says, good point on individual passwords. I'll have to check that.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of online services that allow you to have multiple users. And I think with our system, we charge like, I think $5 a user per month to have a password vault that they can share and also store their individual passwords. The other advantage too, it actually shares with us as well, their IT. So we can actually put passwords in there for them. So when we create a new service or install a new device or whatever, we can actually post it and make it available to the staff of that company that need to have access to it.
All right. From Sean Johnson, we use SharePoint on Office 365 and also host a SharePoint service on Azure. Does storing data on Microsoft servers provide additional security?
We use SharePoint. No, not necessarily. On Microsoft servers provide additional security. No, I think probably the biggest thing is just make sure that you have good backups. One of the biggest misconceptions is that Microsoft is backing up your data on SharePoint, Azure, and also what's the Teams? I'm sorry, I couldn't even think of it for a second. Teams, and it's always good to have a third-party backup for that information. It's really inexpensive to do, and at least that way that when you have somebody that has too much access decide that, you know, I don't need all this stuff on my hard drive, and so they go to their OneDrive and start deleting stuff, only to find out that it was for everybody and not just them. It's a lot easier to recover if you have a good tool for that. And so we use an Axient branded product for that, to back up our SharePoints and 365, etc. Not only that, people, when they're you know, when there's a hostile firing or going to be, or they get the gist that maybe they're going to get let go, they like to go in and destroy like their inboxes and things like that, because maybe there's some shady stuff going on. Nice thing is being able to recover that data, and a good backup solution can do that. And so yeah, I'm big on that.
Carl also chimed in and said, and related to that, Google Drive ? And I'm wondering that if he's specifically referring to shared docs or collaborative work pieces.
Well, Google Drive is a single piece of the Google suite. Shared docs are treated a little differently, but the Google Drive itself, yeah, there are backup solutions for that as well. And again, I recommend it. Google does allow you to like look at previous deleted stuff, but if you have somebody that has too much access, they can delete all the stuff and then go in and say delete all the history as well, and then you're kind of stuck without any recovery at all. Whereas if you have a third-party tool, then you can just say, hey, recover that data from there, and that does make it a lot better.
He says, we just do file storage. Are there security problems?
Yeah, it's kind of tricky. But yes, you can essentially assign security to different folders and different files even as well. It can be kind of convoluted. One of the things I've been a big fan of Microsoft Teams is that if I have a management team, for example, that needs access to particular folders, I can basically throw everyone that should have access to that information in that particular team, where I'll have like an all staff team, for example, would have everyone included in there, and they would have access to the stuff that every person needs access to. But if I have stuff that's like, hey, this isn't for the entire team, this is specifically for, you know, the owners and possibly a manager, then I would create a separate team, which creates a separate folder inside their OneDrive, inside their team drive, that then basically is only for them. And so, yeah, Gmail has very similar options. I am not a huge Google Drive user, and so I can't really speak with authority on that. But yes, they have a lot of the same tools available to them as well. But it is important that you have somebody that understands it so they can make sure that it's built correctly.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any other questions for Jeff out there? Carl chimed in and said, very helpful.
Great. Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm happy, guys. If any of you guys would want to reach out to me and have a conversation about your particular business needs or whatever, I'd be happy to see where I can help you out. I'm willing to do a one-on-one conversation via chat or even in person if that works for your situation. I'm going to post my name and phone number here real quick so you guys have it. And yeah, I'd be happy to talk to any of you.
All right. Yeah, Carl's saying you did an amazing job rattling through problems we've had over the years. Yeah.
Hey, Carl, I've been doing this a long time. I'm not new to the industry, so I appreciate you saying that. I see problems, and if I don't have a solution for them, I start researching, and I will research it until I find a solution that works. And so, yeah, the thing is what people don't realize is that, company A and company B, they probably have 90% of the same issues, and then only a variance of 10% on what they don't share when it comes to IT problems. And so, yeah, it's I can pretty much help in any industry out there.
John also thanked you there.
All right. Hey, thanks, John. Appreciate it.
They're all Mac-based there, and some of their IT issues are a bit quirky.
Yeah, I imagine they are, John. And, Macs fortunately don't need too much babysitting. However, if you were to, for example, use like an Office 365 solution that's online, online storage of your files, things like that, it really doesn't matter what tool you use to access it. The infrastructure of Azure and Teams and things like that are going to work very similarly, regardless of the device you use. It could be Chromebooks, Windows, or Macs, it doesn't matter. But having the expertise to help build the infrastructure to work for your business is going to be pretty universal.
Perfect. Well, are there any other questions out there for Jeff while we have him on the line?
All right. Well, hopefully I didn't bore you guys too much.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate it. Again, Jeff Seeman from PC Technologies, and we really do appreciate your presentation. And we will we'll close this session of the ScaleUp Mastermind out for today. So thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thanks, James, again for inviting me, and thanks you guys for all coming out. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a good one.